Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good evening. My name's Norma and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Patty so much for asking me to ruin my Sunday. And I say ruin my Sunday because on Sunday I usually do nothing. That is the day that I vegetate. But I never vegetated when I was drinking. I was always busy. And I want to thank Anna for sharing. I really enjoyed your share, Anna. And Mandy, happy birthday. And I want to congratulate all the CHIP people. It's such a big deal for us not to drink one day at a time. And it is an honor and a privilege to be asked to speak at a meeting. It is an honor just to be sober. It is such an honor just to be sober. I want to welcome the newcomers to Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to let you know it works. It works good, and it works slow, huh? Everything I'm going to say here tonight's my opinion only. I don't know if this is the way my life went down, but it's the way I see it. You can tell I'm a Mexican, right? And I'm of the Mexican variety that my family had parties Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And in the olden days, they didn't buy six-packs or cases of beer. They bought kegs of beer. And they used to put it in the bathtub with those big blocks of salt and those chunks of salt. I would believe I was born an alcoholic. I also believe I was born a liar, a cheat, and a manipulator. That comes natural to me. And when I was a kid, I used to live behind my grandmother's house, and like I said, we had parties every weekend. And they used to think it was cute to give all us kids, a glass of beer. And I used to go from relative to relative to get me that beer. I loved the way keg beer tasted. I used to sneak into the bathroom and try to pump me my own and get nothing but foam. But I loved it. The first feeling I remember having when I was a little girl, I never felt loved when I was a kid. I always felt lonely. I always felt afraid. I lived in terror when I was a little girl. You see, my mother was an alcoholic. And I remember that I used to sleep in a little walk-in closet when I was a little girl. And I have an older sister, and she used to get to sleep with my mother. And I remember I used to wake up in the middle of the night crying and yearning for my mama. I never understood why I couldn't sleep with her. The truth of the matter is I wet the bed. That's why I didn't get to sleep with my mother. But when you're 4 years old, you don't know that's the reason. I just felt unloved and unwanted. I'm also a battered kid. I was beat a lot when I was a little girl, so I was always in fear of my mother. But let me tell you what kind of kid I was. When I was little, they never allowed us to eat potato chips or sodas or cookies or any of that stuff. They said it was bad for your teeth and bad for your hair. And my grandmother always had See's candy in the refrigerator. So when nobody was around, I'd sneak on in there and slam it in my face. That's kind of how I still eat it today, just... And then my mother would show up, and she'd say, Norma, did you eat that chocolate? And I'd say no. She'd start giving me that rapid fire. Pow, 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 pow. No, I didn't eat it. I swear I didn't eat it. Honest, I beg and plead. I didn't do it. She'd grab me by my arm, take me to the mirror, and there'd be chocolate all over my face. And I don't know how it got there. I would lie under any and all conditions. It didn't even matter if you caught me with the goods. I didn't do it. For some reason, something in my mind said the price for telling the truth would be so much greater than the lie I said. Whatever lie I said, I held on to it no matter what consequences there was. I had my first blackout drunk when I was 8 years old. I'm from Orange, and we moved to Mariloma. And we had this baptism. It was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I remember it was Friday, and I came to on Sunday about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was walking around the house, and I could hear them inside whispering about how drunk I had got and who had given me so much. And that was the first time I felt shame and remorse. I didn't know what I did, but I knew it was bad, just the way they were talking about it. I'm also a recovering Catholic. If there's any Catholics in here? I mean, we used to go in the old days, used to go into this little room and tell the priest your sins. I'd go in there and tell maybe I lied once or twice or stole a half a time. I wasn't even telling him the truth. And in the old days, before you take that little host, you're not supposed to eat. I always ate just to see what God's gonna do, you know? I didn't care who I was testing, you know? They said God was gonna punish, and I was waiting for it. And I remember I used to go out to where the horses were, and I used to cry and yearn for my daddy to come back. You see, because when my daddy was home, my mother wasn't so violent. I lived in terror when I was a little girl. I was very lonely and very alone when I was little. I used to go out and pray where the horses were and sing to God to please bring me my daddy back. And I remember I used to look in the barns and the hay lofts, and I used to think that someplace, somewhere, my mother was gagged. I always lived in a delusion. I thought that someplace my mother was gagged because, you see, even though my mother was violent, she'd come over after she hit me and tell me how much she loved me and how sorry and what she was trying to spare me. And you know, I used to think that there was a good mother and a bad mother, so I used to look for the good mother. And she always cleaned it up for my dad, you see. She used to, because they used to say he was in college, but he was in the joint because he was a heroin addict, you know. And so, I mean, she always cleaned it up for him. She always said that my daddy loved me, but he was just sick. But she never cleaned it up for herself, you see. She never made it better for herself. So I always had that idea. When I was 10 years old, my mother got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. So before, when we used to live in farmland and country land, she moved us to Pomona, where the girls ratted their hair up and wore tight skirts in the 5th grade, okay? Oh, my God. And I remember they used to wait for me and my sister every day after school to give us our initiation. And I'd cry to the teacher, they're going to beat me up. And on the last day of school, the guys and the girls cornered my sister and they jumped her. And I remember I flagged some car down and I got him, and he came and he pulled my sister out and put her in the car and took us home. And that day we went home and we told my mom what happened. And my mother got on the phone and she made sure that the next semester my sister got to go to another school. And one more time I wasn't loved enough. One more time I wasn't good enough because I had to go back to that school. I had to suck it in one more time. And I used to go to that school, and every day after school, those kids used to wait for me after school. And I'd cry to the teacher, they're going to beat me up. I'm also a Mexican reject. You know, I wasn't raised on tortillas, beans, and rice and Mexican food. I was raised on pot pies, TV dinners, and bologna sandwiches. I mean, my mother's an alcoholic. She doesn't cook, right? So I didn't fit in with the Mexican chicks because I had a sandwich, you know. And when my mother was a great AA'er. She went to meetings every day. From 7:30 to 10 o'clock, Mama was at a meeting. From 7:30 to 9:45, we had the boys over. We were doing a little spray paint, a little glue. My drug of choice is whatever you got, we doing, right? Besides, there was no alcohol. We were just little children. And every now and then, Mama would come home early and catch the guys there, and we'd all pay. You know, she didn't care. She beat up the guys, too. And And what happened is my mother when she got sober, she also decides to go on a diet. And like I said, we never had tortillas in my house. I mean, my mother made beans once, and she put spinach in it, okay? And, well, you know, it was pretty good. I mean, if you don't know any better, it's good, right? And anyway, in the olden days, they used to have those double desks. Well, I used to do these little burglaries to eat at other people's houses. I never thought about stealing their stuff or rummaging their goodies. I just went over there to eat. I'd go over there and get the potato chips and the cookies. And anyway, one day I got in a fight. You remember those some of you might remember those double desks where the desks are connected. And the girl I shared my desk side with was a white girl. I wasn't intimidated with white. I was raised with white. I was afraid of the Mexicans, you know. And one day we had a little fight, and I called her a monkey, and she took it personal. And so when I'm coming back from eating, she's coming down the playground with a couple of her friends, and her mouth starts to move like my mother's, and it starts perspiring up here. Next thing I know, I hit her, I broke her arm, I beat her up, and all those cholas said, "Don't cry, Norma, wait till you get to the bathroom." You see, finally, somebody was going to pay for the things that were going on at my house, you see. Not only was I physically and mentally abused by my mother, but I was also physically and mentally abused from my sister. At home, I was a victim. And that day, I learned to be a victimizer. That's when I actually can see when my life split and I started living a double life. So I started ratting my hair up, right? Started taking in my mother's skirts. And I remember I used to watch Hobo Kelly while I'm doing this, right? Because I'm just a little kid. And I remember I was resentful at her because she never saw anything, no present for me in her magic wand. And I know why she didn't find it for me. It's because I'm a Mexican. They don't find nothing for the Mexicans. So, anyway, I mean, I started ratting my hair up. I started having a lot of fun, and like I said, I got into a lot of trouble when we lived in that area of Pomona. So my mother moved us to the other side of Pomona. You know, the book talks about seeking lower companions. I took 3 buses to get to the barrio, which is the ghetto, right? I was the best dressed chola in the barrio. Not only that, but everybody wanted to be my friend. Why? Because I had money. And then if you had a problem with some chick, I'd take care of it. I had a lot of suppressed anger, and...
Yeah.
And what happened for me is, we did a lot of geographics in my mother's sobriety. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of AA meetings since I was a kid. Since I was 10 years old, I've been coming to AA. I was resentful at Alcoholics Anonymous. I remember I used to come to AA meetings, sit in the front, listen to the speakers, be very judgmental. Some of them, the good speakers, were the ones that had really knockout, drag-out stories, right? And then I used to think, I just used to look around, everybody was old, right? I figured they had a lot of fun, now they're here, ain't got nowhere else to go, right? But you know what I couldn't stand the most about Alcoholics Anonymous? Is we'd go to these picnics, and we'd go to these potlucks, and they'd introduce themselves to me and say, "Oh, you're Angie's daughter. Oh, and how's that problem at school?" And everybody knew our stuff, and I just hated that about Alcoholics Anonymous. And not only that, but I remember when me and my sister gave my mother her first year cake, she got up to the podium to say how everything was wonderful. And I looked over at my sister and I said, "Will the real Angie please stand up?" Because one thing I forgot to realize is, what I didn't know then is that it is progress, not perfection. But I expected AA to cure my mother. Anyway, what happened is we moved to Montclair. And Montclair did not have a barrio, a ghetto. And I remember I joined drill team. And now I can fit in with any kind of group. I can fit in the socials, the bikers. I can fit into anything. I don't know what that proper word is for someone who can just mold into anything. But I was one of those. Thank you. That's what it was, a chameleon. And anyway, what happened is I got into drill team, right? Went away from the barrio and the bad girls. So I got into drill team, and of course I went into the restroom, was smoking, between classes, and all the girls were talking about this guy. He was 19 years old, he's 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyes, he wasn't in school, he had a nice lowrider. I had to have him. Everybody wanted him. Anyway, I married this guy, and he introduces me to Boone's Farm apple wine and Reds. Shoot, I thought I was Violet before. Man, as soon as I got that combination in me. And I don't know any social drinkers who take sleeping pills with alcohol, okay? But anyway, what happened, I married this guy when I was 16 years old. And I remember we went to a house party on the weekend. And he went to the liquor store. And he was coming in the door the same time as some chick was coming in the door with a bag, too. I knew he was with her. There was a beer bottle by me. I broke it on his face just in case, and shortly after that, I tried to kill this guy and he divorced me. So when he got out of the hospital, his family sent him to Ontario, Canada. And when I got out of juvenile hall, I said, when I get out of here, I'm really gonna kill him. And those were the days when people used to thumb it. Some of you guys, everybody gang together, jump 5 of us at one car and sit in top of it. There was a days when everybody was thumbing it. I lived in Montclair. I'd never been out of Montclair. So I said, I'm going to Ontario, Canada. Anyway, I start hitchhiking and I get as far as Columbus, Ohio. I want you to know there are no Mexicans in Columbus, Ohio. But what happened for me is I forgot what my primary purpose was. Why? Because I started drinking. I started partying. I started having fun. And what happened is my mother contemplated suicide and I had to come back. So I came back over here to Montclair and I made a conscious decision. I said, you know what? I'm getting rid of that apple wine, those Reds. That stuff makes me too rowdy. I know what I need. I need to get me a job. I need to buy me a car. So I buy myself a 64 Chevy with a big old steering wheel. But I buy a little 6-inch because I can't see over the top, right? Get rid of that wine, those Reds. I switched to a little 151 Bacardi and RC Cola. I'm 17 years old, okay? And I get this job. By then we moved back to Orange. And I start claiming Ontario as my hometown. That's the value I'm from. I'm from Orange County. There ain't nothing out there. So, this is the time when I used to wrap my hair real high. You know when they used to wear those cascades, those hair pieces? And you used to put it in your head and wear it real big? And wear those double eyelashes with all those lines? Oh. And I don't know, but this is my interpretation of the difference between a social drinker and an alcoholic. And this is my opinion. A social drinker is having a good time and drinks to enhance the good time. And an alcoholic of my variety drinks for the good time. You see, when I'm Bonnarooing my clothes, I'm drinking. When I'm putting that war paint on, I'm drinking. In the shower, I'm drinking. And of course I drive and drink. Doesn't everybody? Everybody I know drinks and drives. And, just add a little whites into it and you don't black out and you don't throw up, right? I'd get over to Ontario and we'd beat up the girls from out of town. And I was from out of town. And the next day we'd go look for our hair where the girls pulled it out, right? About, my interpretation of Sunday morning, the normies call it Monday at 3 in the morning. I would probably call it 3 in the morning now, now that we're sober. But in those days, if I didn't go to sleep on Sunday, it wasn't over yet, right? So when I'm driving back home, because I got to get up at 6 to go to work, and I'm 17, right? I want to keep my job. So anyway, on my way home, I'm not enough, so I take a few whites, maybe on a good day, a little Black Beauty, a little something real kicky in there, and I'd hurry up and go home and lay down before those whites kick in and the room's spinning, right? And I gotta hurry up and fall asleep before they kick in. And it seems like I just barely closed my eyes and the alarm would go off. And I'd wake up and I'd have the shakes, you know? And my mouth tastes like, you know, and I'm dragging myself to the bathroom to brush my teeth. You know, nothing dangerous here, you know, because it makes me gag, so I just give it a little quickie. And you know, I'm reeking of that 151 Bacardi, so I need to take a shower. You know, but I just don't. I just don't have the energy. I just had a little perfume. Nobody will notice, right? And I go to work. I never thought myself to be a daily drinker, but I would go. I'm the only girl that would go at lunchtime with the boys to drink a kawama, which is an 80-ounce or 60-ounce, one of those big ones anyway. So I'd go in every lunchtime, and every day I'd have a conversation that today it's going to be different. Today I'm going to go home and I'm going to get me some rest. And, you know, something would happen at 3:30 when I'd punch the clock. I'd say, I wonder what the girls are doing. And I'd do it all over again. See, at the beginning, I only drank Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then it went to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and hump day, right? And then I'd go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, maybe skip Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday. And, you know, somewhere along the line, it just all enmeshed together. And on one of those off days, you know, maybe I had a beer, and that's nothing for me, you know. Beer, what's that? That's nothing. I don't even feel that. Anyway, my cousin came over, and he asked me if I wanted to go to his in-laws' house. And I must have been on an off day, and I had a shot of whiskey. And this is nothing of an alcoholic of my variety. And I went over there, and I blacked out. And the next day, my cousin's wife, who did not drink, came over to tell me that I was all over a cousin of mine, that I was sitting on his lap and stroking his hair, and I cringed at the idea because I hated him, you know. So you know what? You know, I've been in enough AA meetings to know. I swore off. Maybe there was a little problem. I didn't want to be an alcoholic, and I sure didn't want to be like my mother. You know, I sure didn't want to come to AA meetings. So, you know what I started doing? I started jogging 7 to 10 miles a day. You know, we didn't read it in chapter 3, but I'd do anything to keep from being an alcoholic. Start jogging 7, 10 miles a day. I decided to go to college and broaden my thoughts, right? I decided to move, you know, dabble in that other good book. So I moved to a reborn Christian furnished apartment. And I started going to college, and I just smoked weed. You know, weed ain't bad. I'm on weed maintenance. For 3 years, I just smoked a little social weed, right? And I would smoke it, especially right before a hard class like political science. And smoke that joint and get stuck on the same sentence. Read it over and over. And get an F. Next semester, same seat, same instructor, same behavior, get stuck on the same sentence. I did that 4 semesters in a row. I never missed class. I always took notes. The instructor must have been like, what's wrong with this chick? I mean, I never got off the same sentence. On the last the last semester I took that class, I said, I know what the trouble is. The trouble is I'm stupid. My mother always said I was stupid, and I believed her. I didn't know it was the weed till I got sober, you know, and what happened is my girlfriend came over, and she brought these 2 guys over. And I had a shot of tequila. And then I had 2 pints. She asked one of the guys where he lived, and he said someplace by the Orange Circle. My mother lived by the Orange Circle. I had a few resentments with that lady. We must have played baseball that day. There was a baseball bat by me. I picked up the bat, destroyed the apartment, beat the shit out of my girlfriend, bit her nipple. The guys left. The cops came, got in a physical confrontation with the cops, ran out the door and said, knocked on the landlady's door and said, pray for me, as they're taking me to jail. And it had been 3 years since I had a drink. And I did hear some things in AA. I mean, it had been 3 years since I took that drink. And I always had those thoughts. And when in the olden days, used to put you in a little rubber room. And when I got out, I swore off, and I said, I'm never going to do that again. So I switched to a little social heroin. You know, heroin don't stay social. I will do anything to keep from being an alcoholic. I will try anything to keep from being an alcoholic. And everything I swore I wouldn't do, I started doing, you see. I know the book talks about incomprehensible demoralization. I know what it is to live it. I can barely pronounce it. And I lived in one of my grandmother's 3-bedrooms home, and she didn't live by me, and I started renting that house to illegal aliens. I figured if they told on me, I'd go to immigration and tell on them. Well, they all got together and they told on me. And when I got out of jail, I had absolutely no place and nowhere to go because I burnt every single person that I could think of because I am a con artist. Everybody I went to school I owed money to. Every relative would not have anything to do with me. So, you know, when I got out of jail, I started putting all my things in a cart. You see, I'm the kind of an alcoholic you see on the corner that's talking to themselves. You know, what happened for me is eventually heroin stopped working and I incorporate a little bit of cocaine. You know, my drug of choice is whatever you got, whatever's going to take me out of how I feel. I just didn't know how to live normally without some kind of chemical in me. And what happened is I plucked all my eyebrows out, all my eyelashes out. I had a big bald spot in the back of my hair. I weighed 76 pounds and wore a size 7 little girls. And that wasn't my goal in life. You see, I used to walk those streets and I used to sleep with the women of the night because I never sold my body because I didn't think anybody would buy it. I looked so bad. Can you imagine not having any eyelashes or eyebrows? I had sores all over my face. I always thought there was bugs up and down my arm, and I would be showing them to you. Can you see them? And people would step away from me. When I would beg for money, the most I thought I was worth was a quarter. I couldn't ask for any more. You see, being in AAB, my mother was in the program, none of that spared me because I am an alcoholic. And once I do it, I can't stop. And what happened for me is, I remember I used to stay up all night long yearning for some warm toast and some oatmeal. I was 28 years old when I hit the street and I got sober when I was 34. And I remember I used to wait all night long for them to start serving that food. And as soon as they'd start serving that food, I'd be the first one going down the line. And I'd get me some cold toast. I'd start hollering and screaming, and they'd 86 me from the Salvation Army eating lines. I always felt like a victim. I always felt like life had done me wrong. When I was a kid, I gave God the finger, and I swore I'd never pray to him again. I never prayed to him. I never said, God, get me out of this. God, help me. I never said those words through my mouth. But thank God, God read my soul. Because, see, I'm in lots and lots of trips to the county jail. I'm the only one that I know that would cry when it was time to go. Because that was my safe haven. You know, I would call my mother many, many times and tell her that I wanted to get sober. I remember my sister called me when I was in that weed maintenance, and she said she was coming to AA. And I said, oh, God, Lorraine, you just want to be like Mom. So I sent her a little weed, and she broke her sobriety. Obviously, she wasn't done. I helped her to remove all doubt. And my sister was just here with me for the weekend. She lives in Blythe. And we always laugh about that. I've made amends to my sister. I adore my sister. I was always very envious and jealous of her. Anyway, what happened for me is one time my crime partner was going to prison, and she said, you know, you better call your mom and ask her for some help. I'm not doing this no more. And I had called my mother many, many times. Every time I went to jail, I swore that I wasn't going to do it anymore, that I was done. And she said, for God's sake, Norma, I'm making dinner for Johnny Harris. If you want to get sober, she said someplace in Indio. I never heard of Indio. She said someplace by Palm Springs. I went around that jail saying, I'm going to Betty Ford. I'm going to be sunning and muddy with Elizabeth Taylor. I told you what I looked like. I would have never fit in to Betty Ford, okay? Anyway, when like I said, you know, I went to this recovery home, and I always remember AA as being old and bigger than hootin'. And here comes this old lady down the steps. She tells me to sleep on the couch and don't use the phone. You know, all night I'm thinking, who can I call? Somebody get me out of here. But there was absolutely nobody. I had broken, long since burnt all my bridges. And when that sweet old woman who has passed away took me into her office, she asked that question not supposed to ask arrogant people. You know, the ones that want to be a cut above. She said, "What's your drug of choice?" And I said, "Heroin." And she said, "Did you ever use alcohol?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Can you see how your alcoholism led you to try other things?" And I believe that that was my first moment of clarity. She said, "Therefore you identify yourself as an alcoholic. You no longer want to be different. The person that might save your life that day might just be an alcoholic and not relate to anything else." She said, "You get a sponsor and you work the steps." I had got a sponsor who had 27 years of sobriety. I wanted somebody who knew some stuff, right? Not only that, but my mother had 23 and a half years of sobriety, and I didn't want a day she had. I didn't even know what she had, but I didn't want it. Anyway, I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps immediately. And, you know, when we came to that step about God, you know, I got a little resentful. And I said, and, you know, someplace, somewhere, it said, "You know, Norma, you've been a phony all your life. Just pretend there's something." And I chose the wind as my God. As we were standing outside, I felt it touch my skin. And that's what happened for me. I acknowledged, God bless you, I acknowledged that the wind was my God. That's what I chose for my God. I could hear it move the trees. I could see it move the dust. I could feel it touch my skin. And I said, "Please keep me sober today." And then I tell him I loved him, and I went about my day. And I had 7 affairs my first year and a half of sobriety. It'd been a long time since anybody noticed me. You see, when I was a newcomer, I weighed 76 pounds when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I doubled my weight in 4 months. But in the process of that, I never felt like I belonged here. You guys look too together. You guys look too clean. I was judging your outside by my inside, and they were the attraction. And what I learned from that is that God uses my defects of character to keep me where he wants me to be, you see. Because I wouldn't have stayed. I've heard too much. I've been around too long. And what happened is I started doing my inventory. I started doing the things that were suggested here. You know, and I got a little part-time job when I was 8 months sober. They said, "Working's not my problem. It's staying sober that is my problem." So they let me have a little part-time job when I was 8 months sober. On November 27th of 1989, we were removing the Christmas trees from the attic. And of course I was complaining, I'm the only woman. Why should I be taking the Christmas trees? I worked in a hardware store. And then I'm taking out the Christmas trees and going further and further into the attic. The floor gives way. And I fall 2 stories. You know, next time you're at home base, look up. I fell. Make sure no one's falling on you. Anyway, I fell through the ceiling, slammed into some shelves, and went back up and slammed down again and landed on my feet both times. And I didn't break anything. The only thing I broke were a couple of teeth, but they were probably on the rot anyway. And but that day, every doubt was removed from me. That day I knew that God had a plan for my life, because left to me, I would have done something to save my life. When I was 14 months sober, my grandmother that I loved and I adored, she died. And I got mad at God. I said, "Take my mama, take my sister, 2 for 1, but give me my grandma back." I was so mad at God because I wasn't done loving on her. I had got to make my amends with her, but I wanted to spend more time. I wanted to get her to get to know me like sober. I was never sober, and I wanted more time with her. And when God takes something away, he always replaces it with something else. And what I had to do is I had to pick up the piece of paper and the pen. I had to write 5 more inventories on my mother and my sister so I could let them off the hook. You see, because I have such a big expectation of what I think they should be like. I would like a Mexican family, okay? With lots of kids. There's only 2 of us. You know, I want a big Mexican family where there's beans and rice. You know, we don't do that. You know, and, you know, those are my expectations of what. I always think there should be something grand happening. You know, and that's what happened for me. And when I was 16 months sober, I moved from Indio back over here to Los Angeles. I failed to tell you that I was in a 12-year relationship. And I came back to LA to mend that relationship. I'm also here to tell you, you don't get all your loved ones back just because you get sober. I tried for 5 years to mend that relationship, and I could not. And I got a job, and I started becoming self-supporting through my own contributions. And I had this job for 5.5 years, and the company got sold. And an hour before the takeover, the new owners had promised to keep me. They said they wanted me there. I was the manager of this facility. And an hour before the takeover, they gave me my severance pay. And one more time, I felt lied to. One more time, I felt so empty. And I gathered all my belongings, and I went home. And I remember I was crying, and I went home, and I hit my knees. And I thank God for allowing me to experience the pain. You see, 2 months prior to that, I ended that 17-year relationship. Because Bill W. wrote, "The good is the enemy of the best." And I'm always willing to settle for a good relationship and a good job, not the best. Because I don't know what the best is for me. So when I went home, I got on my knees, and I thank God for allowing me to experience the pain. And I remember what Mother Teresa said. She said, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, but she wished he didn't have so much confidence in her. I knew what she meant that day. You see, because I thought that job was who I was. I thought my job is who I am, my apartment is who I am, the car that I drive is who I am. And when those things were removed, it was just me, you, and God. You see what I started doing? I started going to more meetings. I started talking to you, meeting you, going other places. I love staying home. But you know, we get sponsors here, and they ruin stuff. Like they say, we're self-supporting through our own contributions. I say, I'm self-supporting. It's my savings, my unemployment. She goes, what is it, Norma? She goes, it's my savings. She goes, and that's what you do with it. She said, I want you to fax 3 resumes a week. So I'm all resentful. I know you guys don't get resentful at your sponsor, but I'm looking through the paper. I picked 3 places I don't want to work, right? And I faxed my resume to him. Anyway, I try to sell cars, because that's what I really wanted to do. And I want you to know that I was a salesperson of the month, and I gave a whole bunch of people a great deal. I didn't let them pay that sticker price. There's $3,000 in that sticker. Don't you dare pay it. And I'd make $100, and I'm here to tell you I couldn't make a living doing that. I wanted everybody to get a great deal. So anyway, I start faxing my resume to these 3 places I don't want to work, right? And this guy calls me up. And now I'm on the phone talking to one of my friends. I don't got time for him, right? So I tell him I'm not interested. And so then 2 weeks later, he calls me again. He says he's going to a seminar. You know, and I want to kind of like get the heat off from my sponsor. I want to make points and say I'm going any length, right? So I tell him, okay. So I go to the seminar in Orange County. We stay there 8 hours. We come back. He tells me, so what do you think? I say, okay. In my mind, I'm only going to stay 3 months, right, to get the heat off. And so he says, so what do you think? I go, well, I guess I could try it. And then he said, and I go, well, how much does it pay? And he tells me, I said, oh, no, I can't work for that. I need $400 more a month. He goes, okay. And then he says, so when can you start? I go, I need a 2-week vacation. He says, okay. So about 3 days before I'm supposed to start, I tell him I want to start on April Fool's Day. I figured the joke will be on him, right? So this last April 1st, I celebrated 3 years there. And you know what I've learned from that is that I don't know what's good for me. You know, that God is really in charge of my life. That job has given me, it has shown me that I'm not a dum-dum. I've learned a lot about Norma at that job, but I do think it's time sometimes to move on because we keep growing here. And there was a time when I had to go make amends to a woman I remembered I owed some money to. And as I'm driving to her house, I'm praising God again for allowing me to go do this. And I'm singing and carrying on. I go knock on the door, and she says, get away from here. You better get out of here. We're calling the cops. And I start shaking. You know, I just remembered I owed her money. I didn't remember anything else. And I'm sitting there, and, you know, the book says we pause, we ask God to guide us. And then it came to me. You know, when I was on the streets, you know, you get a few, I don't know if anybody's been on the streets, but, you know, when you're on the streets, you get, you know, a few tickets, you maybe do a few crimes, and you get a few warrants, and when the cop comes around again, you give him another name. Well, I did. Well, she's who I gave, you know, and so I'm standing in front of her door, and God so kindly reveals it to me as I'm standing there. So I knock on the door, and I say that I'm sorry for any pain I had caused her, that she had been nothing but kind and loving to me, and she did not deserve what I had done, and I was only there to right the wrong I had done. And she opened the door, and I went inside, and her family came, and I made amends to them all, and I did what was suggested in the book as outlined. And they listened very carefully and very attentive, but they didn't take my check. So when I went home, I got money. You know, so I'm all happy, got money. 2 weeks later, she calls up and asks for the check. I gotta call my sponsor. I don't want to get you. She should have took the money when I was offering it to her. And one more time, my sponsor says, you know, Norma, you're only holding it for her. Give it to her. So I gave her her money, and, you know, I believe that I have gotten to live 2 lifestyles in one lifetime. I never did a good deed to deserve sobriety. I never did a good deed to get what I got. You know, and it's all been a gift. It's all because of Alcoholics Anonymous and all of you that practice these principles. You know, and, you know, I'm never going to do it the way you think I should do it. I'm probably never going to do it the best way I could do it. But I thank God that I'm not doing it like I used to do it. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.